Oh, hello again, everyone. Welcome back. Thanks for visiting once again. And so, anyway, those of you who watch my channel, I got a channel, amazing, will know that I took part in an auction that was really sponsored by Black Rifle Model Works, that's Worx, and in which also Nigel's modelling bench took part. So, this was in aid of young people, providing them with a hobby in terms of donating models for them to build, to give them a hobby, to give them something to do other than, I think really standing around on street corners and such like, in much the same way as we all did in our younger days. And we built these things because we like doing them, and hopefully it interests young people in a lifelong hobby. And I do strongly urge you to go and look at Black Rifle Model Works and also Nigel's modelling bench as well. He was involved in this quite heavily. So this was an auction prize. I donated an amount of money for this. I'm not going to say how much, but I mean, those of you who were at the auction will know. But I certainly got a very good end of the deal here, because I got to I have this model, this Focke-Wulf Fw190 A-8, and I'm going to do a quick review of it for you today, so I think we'll probably get straight on with that now. But the Fw190 was known as the Vuga. Now I must say, before I go ahead, that I don't speak any German, and so I may very well massacre the language if I try, so I'm not going to try very hard. Suffice to say that the word Vuga, I believe, means shrike, which is a type of bird, I believe, and there is an umlaut above the U, the letter U in Vuga, W-U-R-G-E-R. Now, I can't tell you exactly or precisely what the umlaut actually does in the German language, although I can say that where I am concerned, the umlaut makes me look slightly inept. But there we go. So we have the Fw190. This is what they call the A8 version. Quite hard to understand why Focke-Wulf would have named their aeroplane after a main road that moves between Edinburgh and Glasgow via Greenock, but there you have it. There we go. I shall find out a little bit more about why that was, or what in fact happened there. I suspect it's a version number, to be a little more serious about it. But so here's the box. It's a Hasegawa, a 132 scale kit. I've never built a German aircraft before, to my recollection. I think my brother built a Stuka at one stage, but this will be the first one for me. Hopefully I don't make a complete hash of it, but I'm going to have to do some research anyway. But be that as it may, as I say, I'll go through it in my usual way. As you can see, the box art, it's really good, it's really nice, and on either side there is the usual sort of things that you would see, because it's an older kit. It's got a picture of the built up model actually on the side, which I think is rather good, and then on either end it's the same sort of box art as you see on the front here. So we'll put that away to one side for now, and we'll take a look at that or other things in the meanwhile. So we have a couple of bags of sprues. Now what they've tended to do here, by the look of it, and I have had a little look at this initially, is that there are several sprues in one bag, and the transparent parts are also in a separate bag as well. So they probably be undamaged, but I'll just put that away to one side here, and obviously you've got then these other sprues here. I want to take a quick look at the instructions, and we'll do this in the usual way that I do, which is to, by the way, to look at the instructions and then actually to pull out various parts of the kit that I consider might be interesting to you guys out there in modelling land, and so that's what we'll do. So first up, we've got the decals, or decals, depending on again where you come from, I guess. Quite a lot of carrier film on these. I think we can see that there. The kit itself is, I think, 2011, so these are reasonably old, but what we have got here is quite a few decals to detail up the inside of the cockpit. And looking in on these with a little bit of a magnifier, we can see that they're pretty detailed, to be honest with you. I mean, we can see let's get my poker out, wherever it is, it's just over here somewhere. Excuse me, once again coughing. We can see reasonably clearly things like the the attitude, the artificial horizon there. That's a board with details of aircraft in terms of wingspans. That will be the engine RPM. I can't remember what the other things are, to be honest with you, but that's an attitude indicator. No, that's the attitude indicator, which is adjustable and so on. So these can all go on, and we have an upper panel and then a lower one. We'll see that in a minute as well. And then we have the side panels here. This is notably less busy than some other aircraft of the era that you will see, predominantly because I think it was really very nicely thought out from what I can see. So what they've done here is the most important instruments are up here, and then this is fuel and oil pressure and amount left in and so on. And then as we go further back through the controls, the further back you go, the less regularly you may need to look at these controls. So the things you want to look at regularly, particularly when you're under high workload as a pilot, will be up here and here. And then obviously further back here there'll be other things that you look at less. Some sort of adjustment for the weapons, the machine guns and so on here for the it's a gyroscopic sight, I believe, but again, all you people out there in modelling land who know about this, don't hesitate to tell me, put it in the notes. So let's zero back out on that, and we'll put that just away somewhere safe there. Usual thing with, as I understand it from my recollection, Hasegawa kits simply just do a page that's a fold out like this. I had an F5E Tiger II that I built once, American aircraft there, which was strikingly similar in the way that it's put together, in this way. So as soon as you open the front page, you're into these bits and pieces here. But we've got the paint colours here, and I don't know what these numbers will be. Somebody might be able to tell me who knows about this. I'd be delighted if you would. But I can sort of work out the colours from what we've got here, and I think the RLM 74 and RLM 75 will be the coloration from perhaps the German catalogue, shall we say, something along that line. But anyway, I just noticed here this says semi-gross black, but I think they mean gloss. But there we go. So that's where we are. Not too many in the way of safety instructions here, so mind you, I don't suppose we need to be taught how to run with scissors or how not to run with scissors. So there we go. So let's look here and start off on section 1. Usual fairly busy instructions, but we're building up the cockpit. I think it's fair to say that the cockpit components are going to be reasonably detailed. Now I thought about perhaps getting a Quinta Studios type of upgrade there, because it looks to me, from what I can see here, that the cockpit components will be actually quite visible, to be honest with you, and it might be worthwhile getting something in like that. But then again, I'm tempted to just make it out of the box and see what happens, at least to begin with, and I suspect I may do that. So immediately we can look at the side panels here, and they're pretty detailed. They look quite nice. There are, as I say, decals to go on there, so I'm going to have to get my my gentle hands on to actually look at getting those decals down properly. But actually you can see here, this switch here, this little thing here, that's strikingly detailed. Don't know where I've lost it now. Where is it? There it is. That's really very detailed. That's very nicely done, that, I think. That's most elegant. I think that's the magneto selector switch, so both to, 1 and off. There we are. But yeah, I think that's strikingly nicely done there. That's the slider, by the way, for the throttle selector. So yeah, I like the look of that. That's quite impressive. I shall be looking forward to seeing how that fits together, and so on. I'm just looking for the other components here, which are going to be in the other bag. So let's zero out a minute whilst I just find the screen component, the instrument panel, so T component part, and I need to get the bag open. So as you can see, this is sort of first time for me and you, so I get my my scissors out there, and I'll just draw these out of the bag and see if we can find that's R. Oh, here we go. There, we've got probably something relevant here. That's the headrests there. That's an F component. That's the wings. So it's going to be hidden away someplace else. T. There we are. Okay, so there's the T components here that I was looking at there, which is the main instrument panel. See if we can shine some light on that. There we go. That might be a little better. And again, that's nicely detailed. That's I don't think there's too much reason for us to assume that we're going to need any sort of Quinta Studios upgrade. I'm sure they're very good. I don't doubt that for a second, but I quite like the look of that. I think that'd be rather good. So where's the next thing I was looking for, which is the lower part of the panels there. Well, I think they're probably in there, but anyway, be that as it may. By the way, the sprues here, I'll just back out of this, zip out a minute. There's a T sprue there, there's an X sprue, there's a W sprue, there's an S, and then there's a U. So we've got a lot of sprues with maybe a small number of components on them, which is interesting. I don't quite know why that's been done. For example, we've got a D sprue here which contains some items, one of which has a sync mark on it there, that I don't know quite what that is, but look, we'll come back to that anyway, and we'll move on. Let's move this box out the way just for a second and put that just away over there for a minute, and put my bag over in the ditty box over there, and then we can carry on looking. Step 1 then, and step 2 is propeller assembly. So it's a 3-blade propeller with spinner, and a polycap inside, and some blades. Are the blade numbers, R sprue parts. See if we can find those. I believe these were down there. I want to have a look and see what those actually look like. And there they are, and they seem to move. I'm just going to hold them up to the light. Yes, they're what I thought they would be. These blade ends are, you can feel they're quite sharp, and they move to a very thin point, so you won't have to do a lot of work to actually turn them into, as you can see how thin they are there, can't you? They virtually disappear. There, you can see how thin they are as I just turn those. So I think that's been very nicely done. We'll look at the body parts in a minute, the main fuselage components, but just wanted to take a look as well at the engine. So the engine is a 14-cylinder BMW, I think 801 engine. It produced, I think, something in the region of 2,000 horsepower, so it's a fairly powerful unit. Obviously at about that stage, you know, when in the late 30s, when the aircraft was being developed, there was a lot of talk about whether air-cooled radial engines were better, or whether liquid-cooled V arranged engines would be better. It was thought that you know, the liquid cooled engines would present a more aerodynamic feel to the aircraft. It would fly faster, but this turned out not to be the case when you look at aircraft like the Corsair, the F4U-1As, and through to the Ds and Gs and so on, that were capable of up to 440 miles an hour, which is really pretty fast for a prop aircraft. The end of the prop blades are rotating at damn near the speed of sound at that stage. This aircraft was capable of travelling in the region of something like 430 miles an hour, to the best of my recollection. So clearly the idea that radial engined aircraft would be less capable is a bit of a nonsense, really. This aircraft was superior to the to the Mark V Spitfires in almost every respect, with the exception of turning. The Mark V Spitfires could outturn them, and as a result of this, up to 20,000 feet, the Focke-Wulf Fw190 was superior and regularly won battles against Mark V Spits and the like. And it was only when the advent of the Mark IXs and further came on that the Focke-Wulf started to lose the battle. So we get to see the engine here in its assembly, and that is R3. So we're still on R components here, which is actually quite useful, so we can take a look at this. Now, what we can see, and I'm just looking at this for the first time, is that this is an engine that's moulded with no back. Now that's interesting, and the reason why it's interesting, in particular to me, is because, for the best of my recollection, when you look up through the fuselage, through the undercarriage area where the undercarriage would fold up and in, and I'll show you that in a minute, you should be able to see a number of things. One of which will be the inboard mounted machine guns, or the cannons as they were, in fact the 30mm cannons. So you should be able to see those on the outboard side of the undercarriage well, and on the inboard side of the undercarriage well you should be able to look up at the front and see the engine mounting spars, which are quite big, and the engine itself. Now, with this being slightly, well, shall we say, brought to a halt, as it were, I'm wondering what that's going to look like and how that's going to affect the appearance of the engine. So that is a bit of a mystery. So I'm not really sure about how we'll deal with that, but we'll come to that at the time. The other thing it's worth taking a look at here, just quickly, is this is the distribution. I think this will be the distribution for the electrical system, and that will be, yes, that gets placed on this side up straight onto there, and then the magneto and the final drive components get put onto there. And there's some work to do on the cowling as well. I noticed that there are recessed there are recessed panel lines which need to be filled by all accounts. So I think it's a question of checking the I can believe Hasegawa, but I'm going to check the references on this to see what these look like, because I think on the A-8, by the look of it, these shutters or clips would be visible. So there we are. Let's take a look later on. Interesting additional piece of information just for you to know. I've lost my poker now, so I shall use this. This Johnson here is a fan which came inside this cowling member here and drove air both onto the engine and also onto the oil radiator. So, being an air-cooled engine, it didn't have a liquid jacket to go round, so it didn't need a water cooling radiator, but it did need to cool the engine did need to cool the oil. What this meant was that the engine itself was allowed to run on the ground without overheating, so you could run this at 1000 RPM perfectly happily for half an hour if you wanted to. And I gather fairly frequently what used to happen was ground techs used to start the engine up for the pilot on scramble, so that when he ran to the aircraft You actually got into an aircraft that had already been pre-flighted for pretty much and checked. It's also been, you know, fueled and ammunitioned up and so on and so forth. But this could run the engine for an undefined period of time without it overheating. So when you got into a Spitfire, for example, you had to put the radiator flaps open as your first action, and you had to get the aircraft into the air in about 5 minutes. And if you didn't do that, then you risked the engine overheating, because the airflow into the cowlings, which were underneath the Spitfire, you know, fairly inboard, just outboard of the fuselage, and on the lower wings, relied on an airflow going through them to cool both the radiator for the liquid cooling jacket for the engine and the oil cooler. So as you will remember, on a Mark V Spitfire, if the nose of the aircraft is this end where my thumb is, the liquid cooling radiator for the cooling jacket for the engine is on this side, on the starboard side, and the round orifice for the oil cooling radiator was on the port side, but you had to get air into them very quickly. So this conferred us a singular advantage on the Focke-Wulf aircraft on the ground for ground crews. So there we are. So moving along here, we get to the putting together of the fuselage halves. As you can see, this is not raised panel lines here, it's recessed lines. I don't know whether there are rivet lines supposed to be on here, but I will find out. You can see the fairly large tail here, fairly large tail and rudder mechanism, which would be combating the turning action, the torque of the propeller, you know, and the engine turning, because it's quite a powerful engine. And you can see the radio boom there, which would run a wire down to just above the pilot's canopy. So it's an all-round canopy, so you can see all round. So we get this whole thing together here. So you can also see that at this stage, stage 5, you can get the undercarriage in. So the undercarriage, the rear undercarriage here, was controlled actually by the front undercarriage, so that when the pilot put the front undercarriage up, which was electrically operated, I gather, there was and it is on most of these, a system of pulleys and a cable which ran up here and up into there and down, which actually pulled the wheel up. And as you will have seen from the picture, the wheel was already exposed even when up, so that if that cable broke and the wheel was stuck up, for example, the aircraft could still land, and this tail wheel would still operate to prevent tail scrape on the aircraft. So some good ideas in this, and as you can see, this, let's just point into the detail here of this. See this little triangular effort here? That's an access door for the rudder controls, and also for this arrangement of pulleys and so on, so that it could be maintained. Another point to make about this aircraft, I think, is that again it was very innovative. A gentleman called Tank designed and built this aircraft. They, in the design, dispensed with control communications cables and used instead push rods and bearings. Now, there's a big advantage to this in the sense that pilots develop feel in aircraft, and it allows them to be able to understand how much control input, left or right or up or down or whatever, they have to put in to be able to control the aircraft efficiently. The problem with cables is they stretch, and they require constant maintenance and tensioning to the right level. This means that the maintenance cycles, when the aircraft went to OMU, had to be regular and so on. On this aircraft, on the Focke-Wulf, it didn't have to be, because they use push rods and bearings, and the only problem that you're likely to see is if a push rod got shot up or something, or if a bearing started to cause problems. But you wouldn't lose feel, which meant that a pilot of a Focke-Wulf could get into an aircraft that was new and fly it and develop a feel, and a pilot who'd been using that aircraft could go to one that maybe was 6 months old, and he could have the same, virtually the same feel, which is, I think, very interesting and a very good piece of use of engineering to solve simple problems. I think that's really, really clever. So anyway, look, let's move on. I've told you a little bit about that. So we get the fuselage parts together, and really quite quickly after this we're into actually making this look like an aeroplane, and things happen between stages 6, 7 and 8. Things start to happen really quite quickly. So we're into the building of the aircraft proper, and again you can see these wing sections taper down to a very thin level, and look at that. That's absolutely almost not, it's not razor sharp, but you get my drift. There you go. You can see in the light how thin that plastic moulding is. Isn't that good? You can see the rib lines for the ailerons here. I suspect therefore that these are probably, or were probably, fabric covered ailerons, and we can see it's not a lot of detail. There's some detail. I mean, these are lines and so on. There's some bits and pieces to put in here, but we'll see that, I think, in step 10. But I think these are really rather good. I mean, again, the same. You get the same thing here. You can see that. Yes, you can see that sharpness there. I get the feeling that this will go together really very nicely, I would have to say, and the detail is good. I might add, by the way, that I've got some upgrades coming for this from a company called HGW, I think it is. They make these sort of fabric type, there's my poker, found it. They make these fabric type seat belts, and I thought this might be a good aircraft to put those onto. I'll put them onto one other aircraft as well, but that'll be something else another time. So I've got one of them, but I've also got coming a rivet upgrade sheet that you can put onto this, so they're raised rivets. Now, I'm somewhat dubious about this as to how well that will work, in the sense that you put paint on it, they might disappear. There's some marks showing through there. Actually, just looking at that, see if we can just point them up. So you see on both sides, on port and starboard wings, there's just a circular mark there. See if we can show you that. There we go. You can just about see that. If I just move, see the light's on it now. I'll move the light off it and you can see it there. Let's get the old poker out and it gives you a, just there. So let's see if we can show you that again. So just notice that. It looks like it might be a something like a sink mark, but I don't know how that's going to show through on paint, so might be something to be dealt with, but I'm not really sure. Because this plastic's quite thin, I'd be worried about doing anything with that, but that's just one of the little challenges that we're going to have to deal with here. I've just noticed something else as well, actually. If you look here, I suspect quite strongly that Hasegawa have included undercarriage down indicators in the same way as the Spitfire Mark 1A from Qatari did. It's quite uncommon in Spitfire models to have the undercarriage down indicators, which are little spikes that poke up, and because the undercarriage is underneath the aircraft, the pilot can't see them, by the way, in case you were wondering what that's all about. This little spike comes up, so it shows the pilot that the undercarriage wheels are down, because it's mechanical, and if these spikes aren't up, the undercarriage isn't down, essentially. So again, there's another little detail that Hasegawa have incorporated into this model, and I think that's bloody marvellous. That's a really good thing. I know we're out to 30 minutes now, I hope you don't mind. So anyway, look, we've got step 6, assembly of the main spar and the undercarriage bays. You'll be able to see here that there'll be some detail probably going in for the machine guns here and here. There's some other details here. We'll find out what these greeblies are. Thanks, Nige. Good word, that. There's more detail to go in here. And step 8, we're looking at putting on this cowling here and the machine guns here, and also the final assembly of that. So we're then into position with step 10. with the undercarriage assembly production, so I'm going to take a look at that as well, because that's also interesting from what I've researched. So taking a look at this, these there's some flash on this, not too much, but it's not a problem. These are the undercarriage legs for the Focke-Wulf, the 190. The first thing that will strike you about these is they're quite long. I would think probably nearly half as long again as a Spitfire undercarriage. These were designed to accommodate a quite high rate of sink when landing. I think up to 4 meters a second, which is significant, I should add. I don't know how significant, but it sounds fairly significant to me, and the pilots out there that know about sink rates will be able to say, yeah, it's pretty significant. What you can see here is scissor jacks to go with them. That's K34, and yeah, they're both K34. And then these two port and starboard undercarriage legs. There's no provision, it would appear, for any hydraulic tubes. There will be one or two from what I can see, so it's worth noting that. I'm intent on putting those in. I think that would be a good thing to do, just to add additional detail, and I'll be taking a good look about what's going on inside the undercarriage bays as well, so that you can get some detail there. And there's the actuating arm here that gets the legs up and down. As you can see, they fold inwards rather than outwards. That means that the undercarriage, the cart, as it were, the undercart is wider. Means the aircraft is more stable on the ground, much less likely to get something called a ground loop, which pilots tell me is something to be avoided. So there we are. Step 11, auxiliary fuel tank assembly, and another greebly here. I'm not quite sure what that is. And there's antenna to go on the bottom surface, which I think there'll be some IFF antennas. That's, I think, a radio communication loop antenna, probably for DF, for direction finding, I would suggest. These are able to be twisted by people, and they're looking for the strongest signal wherever wherever the aerial is twisted. So it's a DF type thing, I suspect. Again, somebody who's an expert on Focke-Wulf can tell me, then I'd be very happy to hear from you, and please let me know in the comments. Then step 13 and 14, we're right into that cockpit assembly there. What did I do with, there they are. Let's just open these up a minute. I'm going to zip out just a little bit. There we go, we can pull these bags open and not have to use, yeah, that hasn't worked as well as I wanted it to. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't, so we'll cut that bit off and throw it into the bin. So let's have a quick look at this. This is a long piece of transparency and looks really nice, I have to say. I think that's lovely. That looks really good there. So there's some assemblies to drop into the back of the canopy there, and then the front canopy to go on. Because it's all pretty square, masking that should be reasonably easy, although let me let you into a secret, I do have some masks coming for this, so I shall be using that. One of these is, I think it's this one here. That section there is the gun sight. I don't know what the other ones are, but you will note when we see this up close and personal on the coaming on the front, that on the Focke-Wulf 190, and indeed I believe on the BF109 as well, the gun sight was not located centrally, but in fact to one side of the coaming. Now that surprised me as well, and shows how much I knew about Second World War aircraft, German aircraft at least. So I think at that stage we've then got the project complete, and it'll be down to painting. So I'm not quite sure which selection I'm going to make here on this, but from what I can see from my research, I don't think we'll need to be masking anything here, and because the lines are somewhat fuzzy, we can just use an airbrush straight onto this. So if Pear, you're out there, you did some freehand stuff with painting back along on one of your 172 models that impressed me. Well, I'm going to have a go at this freehand airbrushing on this one, and we'll see how we get on. And I hope I don't, shall we say, crash and burn. But there are some challenges there. I think masking the spinner is going to be one of those, or chief amongst them, actually, I would say. But look, I'll give it the best shot I can. And it's the best service I can do to the charity that Black Rifle Model Works has worked tirelessly to raise money for. I believe it's something in the region of £4,000 they raised last Thursday and Friday in conjunction with Nigel over at Nigel's Modelling Bench. So look, here's a review of the Hasegawa 132 scale Focke-Wulf Fw190 A-8. I think this looks like a marvellous kit, to be honest with you. I don't make a lot of Hasegawa, but I have got one going elsewhere that people who watch me more regularly will know that I'm doing. But I'm going to shift this up the schedule, so this will be the next thing that I do after I've completed the current aircraft. And again, those of you who watch me regularly, and for those of you who do, thanks ever so much for doing so. I'm very grateful. Maybe something I do is useful or amusing or amazing or miraculous in some way, but it may be the fact that I string a word together one after the other to make sense. I think that's the huge miracle. I'm not a special modeler at all, and I would leave you with the message that, you know, look, what I do anybody can do. So if Zin can, you can. But thanks for tuning in, everybody. I appreciate your time and look forward to seeing you on this project and perhaps on the next video as well. Thanks very much for tuning in. Take care now. Bye bye.